The next part is actually something I find much more interesting in a certain kind of way. When we're thinking about our research and about our scholarship and about our writing, we're talking about research writing, manuscript production from an editorial lens, but what we're actually talking about is how to avoid authorial bias. Because as I pointed out at the beginning of the session, when we're saying how do we produce a manuscript from an editorial lens, from an editor's lens, what we're talking about is stop being an author, stop being just the writer, switch to being an editor, and then how do you think about writing? One of the most important things that an editor, one of the most important tools that an editor has at their disposal, which a writer does not have, is objectivity. The reason that every work needs an editor is because the writer is never objective. The writer is always biased. There are a variety of preconceived notions. There is the limitations of your own experience and of your knowledge. There is the belief structures that you come from, the cultural structures that you come from. There are the intellectual structures that you come from. Whether you were educated in IIT or whether you were educated in Delhi University will matter to how your intellectual structures have developed. They will be different intellectual structures with their own different set of biases. And those are the kinds of biases that as researchers and scholars and writers, we have to actively break down. Recognizing your own biases as an author is one of the most challenging aspects of producing a manuscript, and of thinking about writing and of writing as an editor, of producing a manuscript as an editor. What are your particular biases? How do you figure that out? The best way of figuring that out is to adopt the position of your worst critic, the critic that you fear most in intellectual terms. I'm not talking about, the fact that a particular, my mother might be my worst critic, but your intellectual opposite. That person is your most stringent critic. Adopt their position. For this, what I will really recommend is something called the believing and doubting game. The believing and doubting game is basically you take any position, any hypothesis within any field, in any context, related to any issue, anywhere in the world, whatever. Pick abortion should be legal or abortion should not be legal. Those. And then play the believing game and the doubting game with both positions. You believe everything that a person who says abortion should be legal, you make their argument, and then you prove it to yourself that this is their argument. I believe their argument, this part of their argument for this reason. I believe this part of their argument for this reason. I believe this part of their argument for this reason. I believe the whole of their argument for this reason. Then you switch and you say, I disbelieve everything that a person who says abortion should be legal is going to say. So once again, I make the argument and then I disbelieve and prove to myself why I am disbelieving every aspect of what they're talking about. The believing and doubting game helps a lot because it allows you to see how your own arguments, the ones that you think are airtight and you think are beyond debate, and the ones that you think are definitely already proved. What you start to find is that proving and disproving pretty much any logical conceptualization is a skill. Reasoning is a skill. Writing is therefore a skill. Persuasion is therefore a skill. Debate is therefore a skill. because logic and reasoning are finding evidence to prove something is simply an arrangement, a way, a skill of arranging words. And you can technically argue pretty much anything, provide evidence for pretty much anything, given just reasoning and logic. Of course, data prove particular facts beyond reasonable doubt within the current situation or circumstance or context or knowledge. But when we're talking about proving arguments, theoretical formulations, conceptualizations, we find that any argument can be made, any argument can be proven. And this allows us to view our own work with a healthy degree of critique. We are able to see where the gaps are, where the holes in the arguments are. And we are able to acknowledge those holes in the arguments, and those acknowledgements, when stated explicitly in our text, both make our work stronger because you've undercut anybody else criticizing or offering that critique of your work, and at the same time make our grant it more integrity, grant our work much more academic and intellectual integrity. And that, after all, is the ultimate goal for any kind of research, is with integrity to increase the body of knowledge. Do it with honesty, with an acknowledgement of the limitations of one's own arguments and the limitations of one's own authority and authenticity. Any author is defined by the fact that they are authentic. The writing is their own. If I am writing an article on a particular type of literary theory, or that writing belongs undeniably and without equivocation to me. It is my authentic thought. That is what defines my authorship. If it's not authentically my thought, if I'm borrowing other people's thought and simply presenting it, then I'm not really the author of that work. I am simply a curator of other people's work. And we are looking to be authors and not curators. The second is authority. And when we're thinking about our authority, please think back to the fact of tone and the fact that your authority has to be expressed with formality, but also with both a good degree of certainty and the courtesy that goes hand in hand with acknowledgement of academic uncertainty and the fact that all knowledge is ultimately provisional. Knowledge will change in the future. We do not know something for certain, really. So the acknowledgement of that is very, very essential. Another thing that helps us to understand the limitations of our own authority and our own certainties, academic certainties, which is essential. All of this is absolutely essential to producing effective scholarship and research and academic writing, because learning to critique oneself and acknowledging the limitations of the scope of one's own knowledge structures is the key to creating research as conversation rather than research as a monologue. So a couple of things that I'm going to end with this session with, and that are very, very useful to, I found very, very useful to understanding the limitations of the scope of our knowledge, is to think about what the ways of knowing really are. How do you know something? How do you think you know something? When we say that we know X, Y, and Z thing, how do we know it? There are 4 major basic ways of knowing anything: reason, emotion, sense perception, and language. So we know that we love our children. That's knowledge through emotion. We know that the sky is blue. We know that from sense perception. We see it. We know that 2 plus 2 is 4, reasoning. We have 2 objects, and then there are 2 more objects. Together there are 4 objects because there were 2 and there were 2. That process of reasoning is how we know a lot of things. The 4th is when we know via language, which essentially means knowing language. So I know that this color is red because it is called red. It is red is a piece of knowledge. I have that knowledge, and that knowledge is simply, what is this color called? That is language. And associated and more complicated ways of knowing with respect to language. We know what is good, what is evil through language. We know what is abstract concepts we generally know through language more than anything else. Elaborating on these 4 ways of knowing are these. So these are also ways of knowing, and they are related to what the note card I had put up earlier, but they just make that more complex by casting those ways of knowing in terms of the fields of knowledge that we generally acknowledge, and then that we generally recognize, and that we generally think through. Philosophy and logic, qualitative science, quantitative science, model and simulation, instinct and intuition, naming and description, narrative or story, and discourse or conversation. That is one of the most important ways of knowing there is through conversation. This essentially means, what discourse essentially means is understanding the provisionality of knowledge, and the fact that there are other ways of interpreting and other ways of understanding, and being able to factor that otherness and the provisionality of one's own knowledge, being able to acknowledge that, allows us to be more open to new facts, new understandings, new interpretations, and thereby increases the body of knowledge as it exists as a whole. I'm going to end with giving you 2 books that you could refer to, that you could I hope I showed you the note card with the website libgen.is, which is not which is a, you are probably all very aware of it, and you download many books from libgen.is, but it's a just in case, it's up there now. And there are 2 titles of books that I think you would find. So there are a variety of books on writing and academic writing and improving your academic writing out there. One of them I've already shared with you, Researcher's Conversation. Do please have a look at it. You can go through a variety of books which will help you in a variety of ways. You generally speaking, they codify writing and research in variably helpful ways, and do please explore. The books that I'm suggesting to you, however, are ones that that force us to think about knowledge in less precise terms and less precisely known terms than we are used to. One is called Walking is a Way of Knowing by Karen Forrest, and the other is Finding the Mother Tree by, sorry, that doesn't seem to be visible, Susan Simard. Both these books are about ways of knowing that we don't generally acknowledge. So apart from reasoning, apart from sense perception, there are also non-human ways of knowing and ways of knowing that are not codified by structures of knowledge that we acknowledge as knowledge. So there is instinct and intuition, for example, was one of them. There is also knowledge from historical roots, knowledge passed down from oral tales, knowledge that certain groups of people, given their cultural contexts, have simply developed over time, and it's almost through osmosis spread through particular cultures or communities. And the other, Finding the Mother Tree, this forces us to think about the knowledge of not only non-human animals but also non-animal beings. What this kind of exploration allows us to arrive or reach for an understanding of is the fact that in our writing, the kinds of certainty we are expressing, the ways in which we are presenting facts, what we believe to be facts or what we wish to present as facts, the proof and evidence that we are providing, the formulation of arguments must be approached with a degree of caution. We are setting out to persuade our readers that this is the truth. When we're doing academic writing, we're setting out to persuade our readers that what we are giving them is the truth. There can be no over-cautiousness in such a project. And a very visceral physical understanding and appreciation of that will never go amiss. Thank you very much for sitting through this session. Hope I'm going to present you with an MCQ, which hopefully should help you go over some of this stuff again at your own in your own time. And good luck in your writing. Thank you.